anxietycenter.com.
Hi. So I'm basically calling just for some reassurance. I've been counseling with one of your therapists for the last couple of years, which for me feels like a long time. And so, just a little bit of history for myself. A couple of years ago, I did have some. It was a very traumatic year. Lots of stuff happened in that year, and so I thought, anxiety was creeping up, and so I did connect with Amanda, and she's just been fabulous. But I'm concerned a bit because I've been doing this for 2 years. I've been working hard and doing the things that she requires that I do, or read the things she requires me to read, and educating myself about anxiety. But what I'm finding happening is I'm starting to step back. I'm starting to see, I've had anxiety for years. And when I look back, of course, I went through this time where I was realizing that, yes, this was really anxiety then, that reaction to this. And kind of like the previous caller was saying, I was able to get out of it myself then, but there was a period of time where I did take some medication. And so now I'm thinking, when I think about the 1-to-4 ratio for healing and for stress and for anxiety, if you are starting to see that it's been your lifetime of behaviors that weren't good behaviors, how does that 1-to-4 play in? Because I'm starting to feel like this is a long time. And I know, for yourself, you had extreme anxiety, and it was a couple of years before you really started feeling better. And I have been feeling better in a lot of different ways, but I still feel almost, if I had to guess, I would say there's probably I'm at 50% having done away with anxiety symptoms. And so I feel like I still have a ways to go. And when I think about the 1-to-4 ratio, I start thinking, I'm 55. Am I going to have to do this still for the rest of my life? How does that look?
Yeah. The 1-to-4 ratio specifically applies to just getting rid of hyperstimulation and symptoms.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's not really the behaviors. Now, of course, what's going to slow that down is how many behaviors we have. What are our life circumstances? Are they stressful, producing stress? For example, how's my relationships? What's my career like? How am I positioned financially? All those things are going to play into it as well. So if a person is just focusing on reducing stress and calming the body down, it's about 1-to-4, but we can speed that up. So again, that's the outside of things. We can speed that up by just gearing the body down. So it's not like a hard set rule. It's just that when researchers looked at how long stress affects the body, that's what they came up with. But knowing what we do now about deep relaxation, reducing stress, doing all the things to help the body recover, we can speed that up. Relatively speaking. Now, if we've been symptomatic and struggling with panic attacks and hyperstimulation for years and years and years, it will take time for the body to gear down. And just like me, you could be at it for a couple of years before you really feel like your normal self again. That's just because of hyperstimulation. Then you have to look at the behaviors. How are the behaviors continuing to fuel hyperstimulation? So why it takes time, most often recovery takes time, is because we have a lot of behaviors and it takes time to work through them. There's the education period where we're just learning about them. And then there's, the buy-in period where it's like, well, I don't really think I have that. And then over the course of time, well, gee, maybe I do. And then, so what's a healthy behavior look like? Then we start applying that. Right. So it's a process of working through changing behaviors that just takes time. Yeah.
So 2 years is not an extreme amount of time.
Not if you're in the moderate and above hyperstimulation range with, say, maybe 15 to 20 behaviors all up in the top 80 to 90%. I'm sure that Amanda did the rating test on you, and she gave you what your top 10 behaviors are and how they're related. Like when you look at myself, I would have probably recovered faster from a behavioral standpoint had I been in a different career. Because for me, I was in a career that I really detested. It was an affront to my personality in terms of what I like to do. So me trying to staying in that would have actually made my recovery much longer. But I left that career prior to my recovery, which made a big difference. So there's that aspect too, right?
Yes.
And sometimes we marry young and we're in an unhealthy relationship and we don't want to lose a relationship because of our values and things, but it's a constant source of stress. So even though we're working at reducing our stress and, trying to do all the other things in our lives, this relationship just keeps on adding stress. And so what does a person do with that? Hopefully the partner you're with is agreeable to getting counseling so you can work out those things, but sometimes not. So again, there's just so many variables that will slow down the behavioral recovery process.
Sure. I get that. Yeah, because one of the things that had happened, a couple of years ago was my husband started working out of the home in another state. So he's he's over 2,000 miles away. So it's been very difficult. This is the first time we've been married for 34 years. So this is the first time in our marriage really that we've had to sustain this long distance relationship. And yeah, I know Amanda has said she was very curious if this wasn't currently going on in my life, would the healing be quicker?
Right.
Because when he's gone, like the other caller was saying, the agoraphobia, I don't really like to label that. It's just, I don't like to go out and do stuff by myself.
Right.
And I find myself very nervous. I started to see that as a pattern for myself early on, even when we were first married and moved out to California. For a year, I didn't go out with him or out without him. Waited for him to come home from work, and then we would go out together. But I recognize so little things like that are coming up, and I'm thinking about those little things, and I'm starting to realize back then I didn't think it was an issue, but now I recognize that that wasn't really normal behavior. I was struggling with the stress of being first time away from home ever, and I know that this is very stressful to have him away from home, even though we're doing well with it the best that we can. There's always that undercurrent for me of, I'm tired of this. I want him to come home. So I do feel that stress. I do feel that I'm managing it better. And I do feel like I finally have gotten to the place where I can say, I'm starting to get the fact that I can control panic. It's taken me a couple of years to actually really kind of believe that. So for me to go out by myself and start to have panic and then start to apply some of the techniques that help to calm myself down, I'm starting to believe finally that yes, this works.
Sure.
But one of the things too, with him living so far away, I haven't gone out to see him because I don't want to fly. And I tried to look at a YouTube video the other day. Used to love to fly when I was younger. So I thought if I maybe look at a YouTube video and watch somebody getting on a plane and flying somewhere and just kind of acclimating myself to that, because I haven't flown in about 10 years. Maybe I would enjoy it, but I couldn't do it. I was feeling the anxiety as I'm looking at everybody on the plane crammed together. And I thought, now the way planes are, I don't know if I want to do that. But I thought, well, then I won't do that, but I'll drive. Maybe we'll drive. But I'm feeling that anxiousness about driving. And I recognize the thing that I'm fearful of is that I feel like I've made strides. And I know this is typical and common, but I'm afraid I'm going to fall back. And I'm afraid it's just going to be in one moment. It's just going to take me one incident of getting caught up in my head and not being able to believe the techniques are working enough to get me out of that. And so for 2 years now, that's kind of held me back from visiting him out there. I couldn't actually live out there, but I could go and visit him. But I'm frustrated. And I noticed the thing that I do, and that I even wrote down that I want to ask you about, is that I know I'm having trouble understanding or actually getting like that aha moment where you recognize that you're not your thoughts. Your thoughts can just pass by. But I was telling Amanda the other day, I think I could argue that to death with you, because we are, and we do. So, right. I'm struggling with that understanding and having that aha of, I do control my thoughts. Because sometimes I think, and I know in the past when I've dealt with anxiety, I was recently recollecting back quite a few years and remembering feeling like my mind was bigger than me. And so I'm struggling with that. Do you have any tips or advice or, any thoughts about that?
Yeah, you said a lot of wonderful things there, by the way. you've also demonstrated you have come a long way in your knowledge and the things you're working on. So you really have made progress quite a bit, actually, in 2 years. You're probably a little bit ahead of the scale if you were to plot your progress. And what I mean by that is, even though you may not feel like you're that far ahead, there's a lot of things that you know and are working on that are significant. So I just wanted to mention that. Now,
can I ask you, like what?
Just your knowledge
like,
of
what do you...
just your knowledge of anxiety, self-awareness, the how you speak about it, all suggests that you have really come a long way in your knowledge about what's going on. So what's left? Well, what's left is actually building the confidence in that knowledge you have, and that's what takes the time. I mean, some of the things you'd mentioned is that you have, a fear of panic. You didn't tell me that you really struggle with panic, but maybe you did. So when we establish fears, they just take a long time to extinguish no matter what. Because as you know from our materials, we have to convince, the fear center of the brain to stop, sending us those fears. And sometimes it takes a lot of convincing. And the other thing too is, travel is another one. You have a long distance relationship, which is good, but you'd like it to be different. You'd like even to see him at that, certain times. So you have this space between you. That's a barrier. And so now you're trying to find ways to conquer that space, but both of those aren't really comfortable to you. So there's threats coming from there. I mean, it's great that you're aware of them. So really what's left is to start building confidence in your abilities. And this is where the notion of, well, my thoughts are bigger than myself, you'll bring that down and you'll recognize, no, wait a minute, I can control my thoughts. It's just a matter of you working at it and getting to a place where you do have that, aha, I can do this. But you're not quite there yet. So you've got the knowledge, a good base of knowledge. You have self-awareness of what's going on, but you're not quite to that place where you're getting those aha and confidence moments that make all the difference. And that just takes time. Like there's no fast way to get there because we're processing a lot of stuff, right?
Yes, right. Yeah, and I found too that there's this stubbornness about me that wants to test everything. Mm-hmm. Like if somebody says to me, wow, you've done really great and you haven't had a panic attack in a year, maybe my husband might say, there's something that rises up in me that says, well, I'm going to test that and prove you wrong.
Yes, right.
I don't know why I do that. And I get so, is that just kind of is that, as I start to believe that I can control my thoughts, is that one of the thought patterns that just goes away? Or is there something else I maybe need to dig into with Amanda? Why do I do that? I don't like that I do that.
Well, I
will actually try to test it.
Sure. Yeah. One of the most common things we hear, and we don't hear it directly from our clients, but we hear it indirectly over the time, is like when we say something and they go, aha, in the back of their minds, they're saying, yeah, but. There's always a, yeah but, you're doing really good. Yeah, but you should, and we do that because of our backgrounds have set us up to be highly skeptical and analytical about things. We don't take things at face value very easily. That's often a sign of high critical thinking too, high intelligence. Whatever the reason is, we do that. But then when we do that, we sabotage ourselves because the confidence that comes forward in that brief moment is quickly usurped by that, yeah, but. So it's something a lot of us do. It's a habit that we've done. I like the yeah, but when it comes to critical thinking, because that's what we want to do. And, testing is not a bad thing. Testing to prove ourselves is a great way to build confidence. Now, another thing you said that's real significant here is there's a thread in your back of your mind that's saying, well, what if I test myself and I have a really bad experience and I start all over again and I realize I can't move forward?
Yeah.
Which is another super common thought that we have about every fear that we extinguish. Because we want to see progress, but guess what's in the back of our mind? Worry. Well, what if? And so that's what we do. Well, the good news is, because anxiety is kind of like, a black and white issue where when we solve this certain problem, the problem goes away. It's not that we can't ever solve the problem. It's just that sometimes it takes us a number of steps to solve the problem to the point where we feel confident, where it no longer becomes a threat issue. And that only occurs through trial and error and practice. And here's the thing. All right, so say you try something and you have a bit of a setback. You're not defeated. You have all this knowledge that you have. What I did, and I had thousands and thousands of those setbacks, quote, setbacks. What I did is I said, I'm going to approach this like I'm going to school. All right, so that didn't work. So why didn't it work? Became analytical, used my critical thinking skills to sort out what I did wrong and what I can do to improve. So the next time, it's not that I'm defeated. I had a setback. So what did I do right? All right, this is what I didn't do. And most often it was me scaring myself. All right, I'm not going to do that anymore. If that's the problem, if scaring myself is the problem, when I'm in those situations, I'm going to work hard at not doing that. I'm going to cut those fear cycles off as fast as I can. I just got better at it and better at it. And the next thing I knew, my confidence was building by recognizing, hey, I just did that. I could have succumbed, but I used this new skill set to do that. And this is how you build your confidence. And when you're extinguishing fears, that's what it's all about. It's overcoming that darn fear message and saying, no, I don't have to be afraid of you no more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's just through repetition and time. There's no fast way to do that. And the stronger the fear and the longer we have the fear, the longer it takes.
So when you're trying to extinguish a fear like that, and you're just trying to take just little steps, and then you start to see, and it seems to me that it kind of suggested, do the little thing, see the accomplishment.
Yep.
Don't try to, go from A to Z,
Yep.
because you kind of set yourself up then. So
Yep.
how do I decide for this? I would like to go and see my husband in May and take a couple week-long trip to stay out there in Maryland with him. How do I know that I'm ready for that? Because Amanda's now said to me, whatever you decide, we're going to work with.
Yeah.
But how do I know that I'm not taking this huge A to Z step?
Yep. And that's a really good question. And it's something that I've seen over the course of years with my clients is that most often they want to move too fast. I'll give an example. One of my clients was really afraid of traveling in a vehicle. She had a really negative experience. She reasoned that experience was really bad and I don't ever want to do that again. So she just could not drive very far. And so as we worked together for a while, she became more comfortable with the feeling of anxiety and then wanted to start doing the traveling again. And so we said, okay, little steps, because the process of extinguishing fear is confidence. And you want to gain confidence by giving yourself little victories. And so it was, driving. We set just as an example, we set a goal for her to drive 50 miles away from home, which was a really big deal. She couldn't even drive around the block. So 50 miles was a long way. So we started that 50 miles as the overall goal, and then we worked at it a little bit, but all right, 2 blocks a day, and then 5 blocks a day, and then 10 blocks a day. As she worked at it, she got confident. She said, well, I had a little trouble here, but, I calmed myself down, so I think I can go a little bit further. So we did that. And then she was making good progress, but then her husband was putting pressure on her to go farther and farther and farther. So she said, well, I can good it with this distance. I feel really comfortable at about 200 miles now, which I never dreamed I could be, but I'm comfortable. So, my husband wants me to go for a 1,500-mile trip, and I think I want to do that. And I cautioned her. I said, well, you're good at, the distance you've set, but if you take up too much, once you go beyond that comfort zone, guess what's going to happen? The fears are going to pop up again. And if you're really far away from your safe zone, it's going to be more difficult to contain. Well, we had the conversation, but he convinced her to go, so she did. And it was an okay experience, although she really struggled at times. She got there and got back, but it really shook her confidence. So then we have to start all over again. So, and I've seen this so many times where people want to make great big steps instead of little ones, build the confidence over the time. When I look back at my recovery, I was really good at little steps of victory. I knew what my limits were. I couldn't go beyond my city. I just had a small path I could drive back and forth. And so I started pushing that out a little bit and a little bit and a little bit. And I really gradually expanded it and expanded and expanded it. And I took my time. And instead of beating myself up when I had a failure, because I did, sometimes you go to that point and it's just like, oh my gosh, I can't stand this. The feelings are too much. But if you do it in small increments, those miles build up. The next thing you know, you're traveling way farther than you ever thought of. And then there comes a time when you realize, you know what? I've been traveling. Look how far I've traveled now. I've been good all this time and I thought I could never do it. I'm going to go now. And I had that much confidence where I started to go way further. And because I had those confidence moments, I was able to reflect back on them during those moments of struggle. It's like, all right, you're way beyond where you should be. Or you're going to have to, no, wait a minute. No. There's no difference here. It's just mileage. It's no big deal. And so I had a lot of confidence to keep myself calm. And that really made a big difference. So if you are looking at traveling, stay within your comfort zone. Grow it a little bit at a time, not try to do it all at once.
Yeah, because my husband did say, if you're not ready for this, it's okay. And so that was just a blessing in itself, because he never puts extra pressure on me. And after 2 years of living apart, he's been flying in every other weekend. It's been stressful, but he's been so patient. But we were kind of saying, maybe this weekend when he's in, I said, what if we just take maybe a drive somewhere? Let's go a little further. And he said, yeah, that would be fun. We'll just go for the drive for the day. For me, just to kind of see, am I ready for this 2,000-mile trek? I don't know, but I thought maybe that would kind of give me a good idea. So maybe that's the better way to go until I'm ready to do something.
I would recommend that. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, some people do take great big steps and they find them helpful, but it's usually the rare exception, not the rule.
Okay. Yeah, and I've always kind of been the one that just tries to take too big of a chunk because I want, who doesn't want to feel good? Who doesn't want their life back, right?
Yep.
So you try so hard to do it. I know sometimes I've done really well with that, and I know sometimes not so much. But in this last couple of years, since I've really been digging now into the reason for anxiety, now I'm finding that those bigger steps are harder for me to take back. When I didn't know I had anxiety, they were a little easier. I didn't know what I was dealing with. I just wanted out of it.
Yeah.
And I took large steps, but now I feel the process is a little bit slower. Thanks so much. And I want to say I love the newsletter you started to send out. I don't know if you're getting feedback on that, but I thought this is great.
Oh.
I love to see the information that was in there. So thank you for that. Yeah.
Oh, you're welcome. We used to send out newsletters, but the problem for me is just I have so many balls in the air most of the time.
Yeah.
And we're going to be announcing this in the next little while, but we have a brand new website in development that we've been working on for over a year, new technology, everything else. And so that's been taking my time, but we are going to be sending out newsletters again just to let people know what the new things are and where to find them and all that. Yeah. So thank you for the feedback. I appreciate that.
Yes, I really liked it. I did. Yeah. Thanks so much, Jim.
Oh, you're more than welcome. You're doing really well. I know 2 years might seem like a long time, but when you look at what we have to do to overcome anxiety, it's just a lot of work, and there's certain aspects we can't rush, and extinguishing fear is one. There's just nothing that we can do to convince the brain to drop those fears other than work at it and slowly convince it over time with some of them. So if it seems like it's slow,
I'm not able to hear you anymore. I see that your mic is muted.
Oh. Well, isn't that something?
Yeah,
there we go. Sorry about that.
Oh, there.
I don't know why.
I missed.
I wonder if there's a timeout on this thing. This has happened 2 or 3 times now where I haven't muted it. It's just actually automatically muted. Oh. What I was saying is that, based on your comments, you are a lot farther along than you think you are. And while we'd like to see progress happen quicker, especially since we're impatient and our life's disrupted. I mean, who doesn't want to get back to our normal life? It's just there's certain things that just take time. And one of them is convincing the amygdala that it needs to drop these fear messages. And that can only happen by repetition and time. There's just no fast way to do it, especially fears that are, strongly held at some point. It just takes time to really convince ourselves that we're okay. And it's through the combination of confidence and seeing results and small victories over the course of time. So you can't rush that. There's just no way you can rush that.
Okay. And I know Amanda has said that. And sometimes and the reason I called today is I just needed that reassurance, just to hear this is par for the course and it's okay. And yeah, so thank you so much.
You're more than welcome. You're in really good hands with Amanda.
I couldn't. Oh, yeah. I love her. I love her.
Yeah. We do too. She's really good at what she does, and she's just a wonderful person. So yeah. She is. She's fabulous.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. And I so appreciate your site. And I know I've referred a couple of my close contact people to you, and I know they're counseling with some of your counselors. It's just been awesome to see them grow too and heal. And so, you're like everybody always says to you, I'm so appreciative of everything that you put out there. It's been an alternative choice to make that I've been looking for forever. Like the previous caller said, I do not want to take medication.
Yeah.
Did that, been there, it did nothing. So I'm so glad for your site and for the reality of your site. I think there's nothing that you're not honest about. And so I appreciate that too. So thank you.
Well, thank you for your kind comments. One thing too, you talk about your friends. Here's where you can encourage them too, that it's going to take time if they're being impatient.
Yeah.
Because we all grow together, and we all learn from each other. And once we come through anxiety disorder, we just know what it takes, and there's just certain aspects that just take time, and we can't rush. And so here's where you can be a mentor to them just by encouraging them to persevere, and they'll grow together. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, once I started talking about having anxiety, it was like out of the woodwork, people were coming. I
Yes.
thought, there's a lot of people who deal with anxiety. I really, and I think a lot of people hide it. I know I hid it for years, and I
Yeah.
didn't know what I was dealing with, and I just hid it. So,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And it's, anxiety is quite prevalent, and a lot of people do hide it because most people can't tell we're anxious, but we can on the inside. So, you know, just recently there was several research studies now that have fully disproven the genetic link aspect. So over the course of time, when we first started this way back when, in 1986, 87, we were dealing with, well, anxiety is caused by a biological problem with the brain, anxiety is caused by a chemical imbalance in the brain, and anxiety is caused by a genetic predisposition.
Mhm.
Well, all that disempowers people. They think, well, if I got this, I need to take that to get better. And of course, they never did. So over the course of
Yeah.
time, they finally disproven that, the biological brain problem was, a busted theory that wasn't right. So they latched onto the chemical imbalance, and so they hold on to that for a long time, and
Yeah.
that was finally disputed in 2011. So that's
Yeah.
gone now. And just this last year, several research studies have come out disproving the genetic link to mental health issues. So there is no biological reason, chemical or genetic reason why we struggle with anxiety. It's all learned behavior, which does empower us to say, well, wait a minute. If it's
Right.
behavior, I can change behavior. So that empowers people to make those changes. I wish it was easier and faster, but it's not, but we still
Yeah.
can. And so
Right.
as you're growing and helping your friends, hopefully other people will recognize they can come forward with their anxiety issues because
Yeah.
they can deal with them. It's not like there's a character flaw with us or that there's something damaged in their brain. It's not, we just learned how to be anxious because of our background. So
Yes.
by helping people understand that and move forward, more people can come forward. So hopefully it won't be such a big issue as it is now.
Yeah. Yeah. I know I agree totally with what you're saying, and I kind of fit into that whole map of things, like you said, because I remember thinking it was a chemical imbalance. That's
Yeah.
what I was told. And now I feel very differently. And I also remember struggling with hearing it's a behavioral issue. It's
Yeah.
how I process life. And then I remember thinking, how do I get out of that then? If that's so much who I am, this is going to take forever because, and
Yeah.
how much of me is going to change? And I remember Amanda constantly saying, you're not going to be lost in that. You
Right.
don't lose who you are, your values. You don't lose those. And so that took me a while too to understand how that works. And now I see, now I get it. And now that I have had some success in that, and I look back and I think I'm still me. I still feel like me.
Yeah.
I feel more confident for sure. There's little things that have changed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And those are great comments because, so many times when we say it's a behavioral thing, people take offense because, well, then now you're blaming me. I have anxiety. Well, we're not blaming
Yeah.
anybody. We're just letting people know where the problem is so we can fix it. That should be good news. And the other, and you made another comment that's so common is people say, well, I'm afraid that, my personality is going to change. And it's
Yeah.
understandable because we don't know what's on the other side of therapy. But when you
Right.
when you come out the other
Right.
side of therapy, you realize not only have you not changed, you've actually become way better as a person. You become authentic, you have healthier relationships,
Yeah.
you become assertive and not have to feel guilty
Yeah.
for sending everything. We just become a way better version of ourselves.
Yeah.
Takes work,
Yes. And I'm
but we
just,
get there.
yes, it does.
Yeah.
I'm just starting to see that. I'm just starting to feel like I'm drying my wings, after I've been in this cocoon for so long, and now
Yes.
I'm something different, but I'm still the same. And I'm starting to see that to be true and starting to believe that to be true and starting to think like the boundaries issue thing. I do have the right to put up some boundaries here especially as I'm
Hmm.
healing.
Yep.
And yeah, it has built my confidence in that way in some regards. And I'm starting to believe it.
Yep. Good
Yeah.
for you. Yeah, I love the analogy you just, I may have even used that in an upcoming meme is when you look at where we struggle with anxiety, we're actually like a caterpillar crawling along the ground. But as we go through therapy and we move through that cocoon stage, we become the butterfly that then flies and soars. That's
Yeah.
essentially, good characterization of what therapy can do for us. So I thank you
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah. Well, I still feel like my wings are wet.
Yeah. And they will for
I'm
a while
still
because,
clinging on.
yeah. And it's
Yeah.
just because your confidence needs to be built and you have some work to go. That's
Yeah.
all that is. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Jim.
Oh, you're more than welcome. I appreciate your questions and comments. I highly value them. And thanks for your comment about the newsletter. Sometimes you wonder if we're pestering people when we send it out.
No, I personally like this. Yeah.
Oh, good to hear. Good to hear.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, well, I wish you all the best, and I hope you do pop back and give us an update.
I will. Thank you.
All right. Okay, thanks so much.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.